What if I told you the house that inspired one of the greatest novels ever written was demolished with dynamite? Not by enemies, not by war, but by the very family that built it. What if the mansion behind the Great Gatsby didn't slowly crumble into ruin, but was erased in 6 months, sold for scrap, its marble floors ripped out and its limestone walls crushed for landfill? This is the story of Harbor Hill, the Gold Coast palace that tried to make wealth permanent and discovered that stone can outlast a fortune but not forever. May 1899. The North Shore of Long Island is still a blank map. Farms, fishing villages, salt wind. No palaces, not yet, but money is moving. Families with names unfamiliar to the society pages are buying land by the acre. They arrive by private rail car, study the water line, sign papers, and depart. At Roslyn, where the harbor narrows and bluffs rise steeply from the water, one parcel stands apart. 216 acres, deep water access, forest thick enough to hide an empire. Clarence Hungerford McKay, just 25 years old, heir to the Comstock silver fortune and a global telegraph empire, buys it without hesitation. Beside him stands Catherine Dewar, 22, her blood tracing back to colonial New York, her family name carrying the quiet assurance that new money cannot purchase. Together they commissioned Stanford White, not his firm, the man himself, the architect of the Washington Square Arch, Madison Square Garden, the great clubs of Manhattan. His name alone signals permanence. The program is vast, a great hall for 200 guests, a dining room for 40, a music room tuned for soloists, guest wings for weekend parties of 20. Budget $2 million, roughly $70 million today. Schedule 3 years. Workforce 200 men at peak. They call it Harbor Hill. The name sounds gentle. It will be neither gentle nor modest. Ground breaks in July. Indiana limestone arrives by rail, 60 tons in the first shipment. Italian marble, Belgian glass, Oregon old-growth timber, not a single knot larger than a dime. By 1902, the shell rises above the tree line. Seen from the water, it resembles a cathedral under construction. White refuses the comparison. Not Gothic. Renaissance restraint scaled to the New World. By June 1903, Harbor Hill receives its first guests, and the performance begins. The McKays settle into a rhythm that society pages track like a second calendar. Winters in Manhattan, springs at Harbor Hill, summers in Europe or Newport, though Harbor increasingly competes with Newport for space on the year. The house demands presence. Empty, it ages. Lived in, it declares itself. In April 1906, Enrico Caruso sings in the music room. A private recital for 60 guests arrived by special train from Pennsylvania Station. White designed the acoustics with engineers from Carnegie Hall. Guests stand on the back terrace, listening through open French doors, afraid to breathe. Catherine weeps. Clarence writes a $5,000 check to the Metropolitan Opera's education fund. It clears within 48 hours. The balls come in 1909, 1910, 1912, guest lists cresting over 300, orchestras, not quartets, flowers shipped from Pennsylvania greenhouses arranged in columns 8 feet high, champagne by the case, dancing until 3 a.m. The cost per ball, $15,000 to $20,000, roughly $600,000 today, not counting the wear on carpets and crystal, not counting the strain. Because beneath the light, something shifts. Photographs from these years show Catherine smiling, but the smile tightens. Clarence grows heavier. Portraits redden his face. They appear together in public. In private, servants notice silence. Separate bedrooms, meals at different hours. By 1914, the whispers begin. By 1915, they are printed. A scandal sheet runs a blind item transparent enough to identify. A cable magnate's wife prefers Paris to the North Shore. One wonders if undersea wires carry messages home or only silence. Catherine remains in Europe through the winter. Her letters speak of museums and war relief work. She does not mention Clarence. She does not mention Harbor. The omission is louder than complaint. The house built to display love now displays its opposite. Children witness it. The youngest daughter develops migraines doctors cannot explain. Staff suspect they are a form of escape. The great hall, built for joy, begins to learn how to echo. Someone had to pay for it all, and someone was losing the ability to. Clarence McKay's wealth traced back to copper wire on the ocean floor. His father had reached California in 1851 with nothing. By 1873, he co-owned the Comstock Lode, the richest silver strike in American history. By 1884, he owned something more valuable still, a transatlantic telegraph network. A message that once took 2 weeks by steamship now arrived in 2 minutes. Speed bred monopoly. By 1900, commercial cable carried 23% of transatlantic telegraph traffic. Annual revenue, $4.2 million. Profit margins near 40% in good years. Clark inherited the empire at 28, just as Harbor Hill's walls were climbing past the second floor. The timing was not accidental. The threat was already arriving. In 1901, Guglielmo Marconi proved a transatlantic wireless signal. No seabed cables, no repair ships, no million-dollar copper strands, only towers, transmitters, and current. McKay answered with expansion. 4 new Atlantic routes, offices in 12 cities, $2 million in equipment upgrades. He negotiated personally, traveled to London quarterly, testified before Congress. In 1907, his personal income reached $800,000, roughly $24 million today. Enough to maintain Harbor Hill, a Manhattan townhouse, a Newport cottage, all 3 staffs, and still bank half. But fortunes built on technology die by technology. By 1912, wireless had matured. When the Titanic sent its distress calls that April, the world understood, wireless was not experimental, it was essential. Marconi's shares tripled. Commercial cable stagnated. McKay merged with postal telegraph in 1914, a move that looked like growth but signaled retreat. Mergers are what firms do when growth stops. Then war. In 1917, the U.S. government seized international cable traffic for national security. Compensation was promised, paid slowly, calculated below market rate. McKay's income fell 30% in a single year. Costs did not fall. By 1918, his personal income had slipped to $400,000, still large, but half of what it had been and falling. Harbor noticed quietly. A gardener not replaced at retirement. Guest suites opened less often. The wine cellar stopped accepting new vintages. Whispers, not shouts, but the weight above was not lightening, and the fortune beneath was thinning. April 1917. America declares war. By April 20th, Harbor Hill declares itself too. The Grand Hall that hosted 300 dancers the previous autumn now seats the North Shore Women's War Relief Committee. 70 women gather at tables once reserved for champagne. They roll bandages, 500 per session, each inspected to Red Cross specifications. Catherine McKay presides. The organizational skills dormant in social life suddenly find their purpose. The music room becomes headquarters for Liberty Bond drives. Menus narrow to 4 courses. American wines replace French. Excess is suspect. Restraint becomes virtue. Then October 1929, Black Tuesday, the market collapses. Clarence is not wiped out. His wealth is not centered in equities, but he is wounded. Postal telegraph falls from $42 to $18 and never recovers. Annual maintenance at Harbor Hill runs $95,000 in 1930, roughly $1.7 million today. Investment income down 30%, still falling. He trims carefully at first. The orchestra for the Christmas ball shrinks from 22 pieces to 14. Then the depression deepens and trimming becomes policy. The gardening crew drops from 12 to 7. 3 housemaids are let go. Charles Brennan, the butler who arrived in 1904 and served 23 years, accepts a 10% pay cut to avoid dismissal. Property taxes double. Clarence challenges the assessment 3 times. He loses twice. By 1936, Clarence is 62 and unwell. Diabetes poorly controlled, cardiac strain. His physician prescribes rest. Clarence ignores it. Postal telegraph needs him daily. Merger talks with Western Union stall, resume, stall again. The company bleeds. He can only slow it. The house defers its own maintenance now. Paint due for refresh is postponed. Carpets due for replacement are turned instead. In 1937, the roof leaks. The ballroom ceiling stains. Visitors pretend not to notice. Clarence dies on November 12, 1938. He is 64. Harbor Hill passes into legal dispute. Children, a second wife, contested will, slow courts. A caretaker and 2 groundsmen remain. Pipes freeze in 1940, flooding the north wing. In 1941, vandals break windows. By 1942, the family decides to sell. No buyers. The price falls from $400,000 to $300,000 to $250,000. In 1947, a developer appears for the land, not the house. The mansion is an obstacle. Demolition is written into the bid. The family accepts $190,000. Demolition begins in October 1947. Salvage crews come first. Marble mantels, crystal chandeliers, mahogany paneling, the grand stair sold to dealers. Then dynamite, limestone crushed for fill, copper roof stripped for scrap. By April 1948, the site is bare. 45 years after completion, 6 months of methodical erasure, gone. 20 miles west, in a rented cottage in Great Neck, a 26-year-old writer had been watching the shoreline. His name was FScottFitzgerald. The year was 1922. He lacked the standing to enter Harbor Hill, but he attended parties nearby, columned facades, terrace lawns, motorcars unloading guests, orchestras until dawn, champagne that made prohibition feel like a distant joke. He studied the performers carefully. Men who minted fortunes in war contracts and speculation. Women who married titles, money, or both. Everyone performing wealth, joy, the faith that 1922 would last forever. He recognized the performance. He was performing too. His income was substantial for a writer and inadequate for this shore. He stood inside the world but not of it, the perfect angle for observation. In autumn 1923, he began drafting. The setting, 2 fictional peninsulas mapped directly from Great Neck and Sands Point, where Harbor Hill stood. The plot, a mysterious millionaire stages extravagant parties in a waterfront mansion, straining toward a dream he cannot hold. The title changed. The Great Gatsby was published April 10, 1925. Initial sales disappointed. The novel slipped from lists. Fitzgerald earned under $2,000 in royalties that first year. The McKays never noticed. Their staff did not discuss it. But history reversed the verdict. Reissued to soldiers in World War II, adopted by universities in the 1950s, canonized by the 1960s. By 1970, The Great Gatsby sold more copies annually than it had in its entire first decade combined. The Gold Coast, shimmering, doomed, forever paused in summer, became more real than the historical shore it described. Harbor Hill threw real parties for real guests who are now mostly forgotten. Gatsby threw fictional parties for fictional guests who do not die. Fiction preserved what fortune could not. Harbor's demolition was not unique. Between 1940 and 1960, over 200 Gold Coast estates were destroyed, taxes, maintenance, suburban development. The pattern was always identical, but something shifted. In 1966, Congress passed the National Historic Preservation Act. States followed with landmark designations. Some estates were saved: Oheka Castle, Old Westbury Gardens, Sands Point Preserve. Victories built on advocacy, financial creativity, adaptive reuse, museums, nature centers, event venues. Ways to make history financially sustainable in a world that can no longer staff 38 servants. The workers who built Harbor Hill are gone. The family that commissioned it gone. The architect, the guests, the orchestras, all gone. The house itself erased in 6 months for $190,000. What endures? The record, the photographs, the floor plans in archives, the fragments in museums, the story we are telling right now. And a choice. About the house is still standing, still vulnerable, still waiting for communities to decide their value outweighs their inconvenience.